Well, it's that time of the week again for Sterlo's wrap-up. Busy 8th round, long Anzac Day weekend of footy. Peter Sterling's here.
Hello, James. Last Wednesday seems like an eternity
It does,
ago,
doesn't it? We had 2 games on then, so we've had 5 days of rugby league, and we've got a hell of a lot to wrap up. So let's get stuck into it and go back to the biggest day on the calendar.
First, I just want to get in. End of round 8 now. We're a third of the way through the season. Well, let's look at it another way. We're 4 games away from halfway through the season. So it is flying, and teams that have started well take some pressure off that second half of the season.
Well, the Dragons certainly one of those after... look, it was a hard-fought first half, but running away with it in the second against the Roosters in that traditional matchup.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty comprehensive performance from the Dragons here and maintained their position on top of the competition ladder. I thought that the Roosters looked way too structured. In fact, their coach, Trent came out and said that that's what they've been working hard on. So it's kind of a means to an end, I suppose. But whilst that shouldn't have been a try to Nene McDonald, I thought they were clearly the better side. I just want to go into 20 minutes into this game, James, where the Roosters were throwing absolutely everything at the Dragons on the back of a number of penalties. They opted to kick for goal, and that's the reaction from the Dragons players, led by Jack de Belin. I haven't seen that before, but boy, if you're out there and you want confirmation of how well you're going in relation to how the other team are feeling, the Dragons got it right there. When you make decisions to kick for goal for a penalty, much of that is based on what the opposition want you to do. The Dragons, they were extremely happy that they opted to take 2 points. They'd had that opportunity moments earlier and spurned it. I thought that was a real confidence booster for the Dragons, just that one moment alone. We
saw some muscle flexing from the Dragons there, and then not long after at Amy Park in Melbourne, saw very much the same and some from the Melbourne Storm. 50 points to 10 against the Warriors. I mean, we know Melbourne at home always strong, but were you expecting a scoreline like that, Pete?
Well, I wasn't expecting a 38-0 scoreline at half-time. You know, we've wrapped the Warriors, and rightly so, this year. So we thought that they'd be very strong opposition. And look, you know, they got beaten in the second half 12-10, so it improved in that second 40 minutes. But they were blown away by an outstanding performance from this Melbourne team, who once they got going and once they get momentum, they are very, very difficult to stop. But somehow you've got to stop that from being 38 points in 40 minutes of football.
Yep, well, in the end, the Melbourne Storm starting to make their way up that ladder too, aren't they?
Yeah, and their leading players, their main players, really have gone to another level. Billy Slater, Cameron Smith,
Cam Munster's been playing out
Ryan Hoffman, and all of a sudden that makes it so much easier for the guys like Riley Jacks to fit in and get the job done.
Let's go to Thursday night footy. We were there for the Rabbitohs and the Broncos. Brisbane, 24 points to 20 winners in what ended up being quite a nail-biting match. South looked very good early on, though.
They got in a position to win this game, South Sydney, but you've got to say that the Brisbane Broncos have a great ability of not going away. You know, even when things aren't going well for them in the game, they stay in contact so that the scoreline never gets sort of out of control against them. And in the end, their second half was very, very good. And I think adding merit to this performance was the fact that their side was disrupted once again. Now, Josh Maguire had to start this game as dummy half. So there's a question now for Wayne Bennett as to how he's going to handle the situation, because Josh Maguire is out. But he came out and I thought his service was very good in the opening encounters. They used Sam Thaiday in this role early in the season. That didn't work. And then when Cody Nikorima came into the game, he was able to really exert an influence, was very sharp around that dummy half area. So I'm not quite sure how Wayne Bennett is going to approach it. I don't think he'll go back to Sam Thaiday. He may well have to start with Cody Nikorima, but I've always felt that Nikorima was best off the bench, and for the exact reason we saw his contribution in this game.
Okay, Josh Maguire at number 9. Then we also saw Payne Haas too come out for his debut for the Broncos as well. We're going to be
hard
seeing
to miss, really, wasn't it?
Yes.
You had to see him.
Oh, almost 120 kgs. We'll be hearing and seeing a lot more of him. Friday night, the early kick-off at Brookvale Oval. The Newcastle Knights, life without Mitchell Pearce. It's looking okay.
Well, it was fantastic that they were able to get a result straight away on the back of Mitchell Pearce's injury. And that had to do enormous things for their confidence. Again, Manly weren't at their best. When Sean Lane scored that try early in the second half, I thought, well, hang on, this might just get away from Newcastle. But Kalyn Ponga just stepped up and made a difficult situation look very, very easy. He just opened that hole up for Nathan Ross to slide through late in the game for the match winner. So great performance again from Kalyn Ponga, strong performance from the Newcastle Knights. But the very fact they got it done a week after losing Mitchell Pearce and the disappointment that would have had within the club was big for the side, and it carries them into next week really well.
Does Kalyn Ponga have to be in this Queensland squad for Origin 1 at the MCG, going on form?
Oh, look, I don't think he has to be there because Kevin Walters, he's got plenty to choose from, even with the absence of Cooper Cronk and Jonathan Thurston.
Yep.
And Michael Morgan might not be at a side that's playing well, but he's been there and done it before. Ben Hunt's in great form. Cameron Munster will undoubtedly be the number 6 if he's healthy for the Maroons after his performance last week and what he's doing for Melbourne Storm this year. So there's a lot of options there, but I agree with Nathan Brown, the Newcastle coach. When it comes to Origin football and Kalyn Ponga, it's a matter of when, not if.
OK. Quick one on Manly. 4th straight loss now, and their injury list getting longer, lurching from one crisis to the next. Will Jackson Hastings be back in the team this weekend for the next match?
Look, I doubt it. I know that it's a very skinny roster he's got to choose from. Now, something like 22 players available for selection, and Jackson Hastings is one of those. But Trent Barrett made a decision a week ago. I know necessity can sometimes change those kind of decisions. I've got a feeling that Jackson Hastings won't be in the 17. Much of it will depend, I suppose. The club have asked for special dispensation for Moses Sully to come into the top squad. If that's allowed, it gives Trent Barrett just a little bit more of an option.
Is there a question mark over the Moses Sully situation? No, 3 clubs in the space of a matter of months. Is there a player welfare factor to that as well, just rushing him back because they need someone in the team?
Well, no, he's done well. I actually watched him play on the weekend for Blacktown and his performance was good. Jackson Hastings played in the same game. He was okay without being great also. No, look, I have enough faith in Trent Barrett that he's not going to be throwing a young guy to the wolves just for the sake of the football team. I've got no doubt that Trent is all about player welfare. OK. Friday night,
straight after that night's win at Lotto Land, it was the Panthers 22 beating the Bulldogs 14. The big headline coming out of this, the loss of Dylan Edwards to the shoulder injury, at least 6 weeks, maybe the season on the sideline. But it's those injuries that don't seem to stop this Penrith team, and now second on the ladder.
Yeah, they had something like 7 or 8 potential starters sitting on the sideline at the beginning of this game, and then all of a sudden to lose their fullback was a crushing blow. And they didn't actually handle it particularly well. They put William a kick out to left centre. That kind of threw their defensive lineup out, and the Bulldogs made them pay by scoring 2 quick tries. And they were in trouble, the Panthers. They were rocking and rolling, but they were able to get the momentum back leading into half-time by scoring a try themselves. It was 12-8. They were close enough then for the second 40 minutes, and once they got settled, they were too good for this Bulldog side, who are struggling in a lot of areas. I thought Canterbury were better with the shape of their attack. I thought they played much straighter. I thought Kieran Foran had a bigger influence. But in the end, they still only scored 2 tries when the Penrith defence was in disarray, and they weren't able to win the game against a weakened Penrith outfit.
Let's go to Saturday night. The Titans and the Sharks going head-to-head. 3 field goals in this game. 10-9. It's back-to-back wins for Cronulla now without some of their star power after that loss to the Dragons a few weeks ago, Pete.
Well, you know when you see 3 field goals kicked in a game, it's a tight affair.
Oh, yeah.
And this certainly was. And the Gold Coast Titans got in a position to win this one. I thought Chad Townsend was the difference between the two sides. He wasn't perfect, and there were a couple of attacking kicks in that second half that were pretty ineffective. But without Wade Graham, Paul Gallant, Luke Lewis, Matt Pry had to get out of hospital to play in this game. They really needed an experienced player to come to the fore. And I didn't think that Andrew Fafita and Josh Dugan were as influential as they'd been the week before. So Chad Townsend got his side home, steered them really well. And I didn't think it was, any fluke that he was prepared to put his hand up and take on the responsibility of kicking the 2-1 pointers when the side needed it.
All right, they've got the Eels, the inform Eels, coming up this weekend. The Sharks. The other match on Saturday night, the Cowboys and the Raiders. We saw a revival of sorts from North Queensland last week, albeit not overly impressive. But it's back to square one again for the Cowboys, beaten in the end 18-8 by the Raiders, who've won 3 of their last 4.
Yeah, I said after last week that I didn't think North Queensland had necessarily been played back into form. And on this performance, they've got real problems. They've lost 6 of their first 8 games, and they were in the grand final last year. Now, I know they've had injury problems, but their style of play, to me, isn't putting enough pressure on opposition defences. There's a sameness about them. I think they're quite predictable. Now, that sameness can work because we saw Gavin Cooper score their only try off Jonathan Thurston. Everybody knows that that's a pet play for the North Queensland side. It's difficult to stop. But I think overall, Paul Green probably has to make some changes this weekend because what they're coming up with isn't working at the moment, and the season is starting to get away. Canberra starting to get a little bit of momentum. I see points in their team. I think they play in behind the play the ball area better than any other team. When they get Leilua, Kotrick, Rapana, Tarpany coming in and attacking that area, they look fantastic. I think they're a dangerous football team, Canberra, and we saw evidence of that to a degree against North Queensland.
All right. I mentioned before the inform Eels, Pete. Didn't think I'd be saying that after the 8th round of footy. Back-to-back wins.
Goodness you are.
Absolutely. The relief on your face. 24 points to 22 over, we know, an impressive West Tigers team. And suddenly everyone's talking out finals football.
Well, that's a long way off, James, but 2 wins just maintains contact with the competition ladder. They now join 3 other sides that are 2 from 8. So poor starts for all of those teams, but they're in the bunch now. And if you can win a couple of games in a row, you'll make your way up the ladder. Now, this wasn't perfect from either team. There were quite a few errors here, but there were a lot of errors that were forced by the ferocity of the defence. I really liked the physicality of this game. Probably summed up best by Kaiser Pritchard, who took out the Anzac medal for best and fairest. He put his body on the line, but so did the Parramatta players. And the West Tigers, they scored a couple of tries, which I know really disappointed Brad Arthur because they were through the middle, basically untouched. But on the positive side for the Eels, they scored 4 tries. They were prepared to win this game late, and I thought they showed some patience, which was what Brad Arthur was calling for. It's a tough win against a side that have shown this year that they're very, very hard to beat. This is a team, the West Tigers, have beaten Melbourne twice, beat the Roosters in round 1, and came into this game as the best defensive team statistically in the competition. So, taking all that into account, this is a good win for Parramatta.
All right. The Eels, loving life, still in the bottom of the ladder, but in the right trajectory. Thank you, Peter Sterlo.
Thanks, James.
That's Sterlo's wrap-up after 8 rounds of the National Rugby League. We're heading to Brisbane on Thursday as the Broncos kick off the 9th round against the Bulldogs.